Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be repotting my mimosa tree or silk tree. This will be the first repotting of this tree since it was grown from a seed. Here is a look at the tree. So I let this tree grow really tall. It was grown from a seed. And then last fall I did the first big chop on it. I cut the top of the tree off here. And you can see it generated new branches all along the trunk. It's never been repotted, so today is the very first time I'll be looking at the root system. Today's work will be very important for this tree, transitioning it from a seedling to eventually a bonsai. So let's get the tree out of the pot and have a look at the root system. The silk tree is a temperate tree, so I've had it chilling in the basement over the winter, and it's just starting to get some new growth on it now. So it's a good time to repot these temperate trees when they start to become active. You can see it's offset in the pot because it was part of probably a group of seedlings I planted, and this is the only one that has survived the years. And this tree was started, I think, in 2017 from a seed, and holy cow, the roots have certainly filled the pot. I'm going to begin by combing out the roots and the soil. This is a first for me repotting one of these silk trees, so I have no idea what the root system will look like. All I can see is they're tightly packed in here and they're quite dry. I've been watering it over the winter, but I don't think the water was getting down into the roots very well. So I think this tree will like having new soil. It should grow quite well this summer. It's always been a strong grower, this tree. Very upright, has large feathery-like leaves, compound leaves, and it's quite a beautiful tree. Yeah, these roots are really dry, so it'll help, combing the root system out, getting new soil in there, giving it space to grow once again. So I know Zin had one of these trees and it was developing really nicely. I'm not sure if he still has it or if he's given it away, I'm not sure, but it was developing quite nicely. So there's a mixture of, larger roots and these fine roots in the pot here, or in the soil. So a lot of these fine roots I'll be combing out, all the matted roots, and just trying to keep my more major roots. And these fine roots will regrow once again. I noticed my sarissa tree in the basement is starting to become active too. It's starting to grow. So they know spring is coming. All these trees in the basement, under artificial lights, somehow they know. And I don't know if it's to do with the, the sugar concentration in the sap or what it is, but somehow they know it's spring. Or getting close to spring anyway. I think I'll hydrate the root system a bit. Just give it some water. So I'll continue combing out the roots. It'll take quite a while getting all this old soil out, all the matted roots out, and then we'll come back and clean up and start the root pruning. I'm getting quite close to getting the root system all cleaned up. I did break off 2 roots here. You can see them here when I was combing. 2 large tap roots. You can see the tree comes down and it divides into 2 large roots. There's another one here that's fairly large. So those will get pruned away anyway. There's lots of fine roots up top to support the tree. It should recover without any difficulties from this root pruning. So there's my root base all cleaned up. So I'll clean up and we'll come back and do the root pruning. Alright, it's time to begin root pruning. So I like the style of the tree. It has a slight curve at the base and then it goes vertical. That's fine. So I need to prune these thick taproots off. So I'm going to come in right here. Prune that one off. The other one I'll also prune off at the same level. Like that. You can see that's starting to get a kind of a flat radial root base. This one's a nice root. It's going down into the soil. So I want to prune it off a little shorter to here. And then I have a lot of roots growing down, so I'm going to prune those off. Kind of creating a flat root base on the bottom. Like that. So you can see the tree sits by itself now. Then I've got to look at the surface roots. So I've got one root here. Instead of coming out, flowing down into the soil, it's coming out at 90 degrees to the trunk. So I'm going to prune that one away. It doesn't flow down nicely into the soil. There's a root here that comes out radial and then it takes a funny turn, so I'll prune the curly part off, keeping my radial root. This root takes a bit of a turn here, so I'll prune the tip off of it. There's another one here coming up at a funny angle. I'll get rid of that. There's one here. Now, these roots here, this one's not bad. It takes a bit of a funny turn, so I'll prune the end off of it. This one is a little high and a little 90 degrees to the trunk. I do have a root below it, so I think this one's got to come off. It's a nice root, but it's just not going a very good direction. A few roots sticking up there. Now here I have two roots growing right side by side. It's a little crowded, a little strong, root growth on this side of the tree. So I'm going to reduce it. This is the better radial root. This one isn't quite so radial, so I'll prune this one away. Like that. And this one also doesn't really flow down into the soil very well. So as nice a root it is, I'm going to prune it away. Like that. And you can see how the roots then flow down into the soil better. This one's sticking up. That one needs removing, actually. Now, this root is a little high here compared to all the other roots. It's a little high. I could prune it away. It is a very strong root. Tough decision. I think I will. And I've got a bit of a bulge here where all those roots were growing out. There's a dead root on the bottom here. Prune that away. Yeah, a bit of a bulge here. I could come in with my knob cutters and clean that up. However, as this root thickens up, maybe it'll flow better. So I think I will leave it for now. And we'll check in on it on the next repotting and maybe correct it then. So the only really strong root I have is this one now, and it is very strong and needs to be reduced back further to here. I have some subdivisions of that root there. I'll do a bit of a profile prune on what's left, and I think that's ready for planting. That's a fairly good looking root base for a seedling on the first repotting. Quite happy with it, actually. Okay, so let's pick out a pot and plant the tree. I've got a pot picked out for the tree. This is a fairly low quality pot. It's just like a production pot, and it has quite a few chips in it. There's a chip on the corner here. There's a chip here. So it's not really a suitable pot for anything but training. It's quite large compared to the size of the tree, but it'll certainly give those roots room to grow. And this is the first year this tree's had any real branching on it, so it'll be very interesting to kind of start developing a canopy on the tree. So I think it'll be a good pot for this tree, even though it's very, very large. I'll put some drainage screens in the bottom of the pot. There's 2 holes. Cover those up with some mesh, and I can add a base layer of soil. Normally I wouldn't plant such a small tree in a giant pot like this, but this tree is kind of in development, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think it'll grow quite quickly in this pot. These silk trees have very large leaves, so this tree needs to be grown fairly large before the leaves kind of look at all in scale. Okay, so the tree, the front of the tree is probably somewhere here. My leader at the top is coming out towards the front. The branch placement looks pretty good in this view. And the root system, well, it is what it is. So I'll put a mound of soil in here, get the tree on top, and start filling it in. And I'm just going to put it basically in the middle of the pot. This is purely a training pot for it. And I'll just make sure that soil is in around the roots. What roots are left anyway. Now that looks pretty good. And I'll continue filling it up the pot with soil. The height of the tree is looking good in the pot. You're just starting to see the flare at the base. And when I top the soil up fully, it should be at the perfect level. And these low quality pots, they're good for tropical and temperate trees because they don't see frost. If they see frost, these low quality pots, they tend to crack. There. Okay, so that is all ready for watering. Let's have a look at the tree first. There's a look at the tree in the pot. It's a bit of a stick in the pot at the moment, but once these branches develop and it gets these big feathery leaves, it should look quite nice. And I think by the end of summer, this trunk size will have probably doubled. It should grow really well in this large pot. So it's time to water the tree now. All right, here I go with the water. Within the last year, I've done a lot of work on this tree to transform it from a seedling, a tall seedling, into the beginnings of a bonsai. I did that chop on the top to get some branch structure started. I did the first root work on the tree, getting that nice radial root base. And I think by the end of summer, you'll see this tree transform from a stick in a pot to something that looks a little more tree-like. Let's rotate the tree around now and take a final look at it. Here's the current front of the tree. So I'm rotating around to the right-hand side, around to the back of the tree, to the left-hand side, and back to the front. I'm going to put this tree back into the basement because we have a really cold night coming up, minus 14 degrees Celsius. In a couple of days. At the moment today, it is 10 degrees above freezing, so quite a swing in the weather coming. So I better put this tree in the basement, keep it at a moderate temperature, and then as spring approaches, I can move it out here to the greenhouse. I'm going to place some stones around the tree just to hold it in place until those roots get established. So There's one giant rock there. And I'll put this one here. Like that. So now I can move it back into the basement. It would have been very easy for me to just let that tree grow in the same pot for another year, thickening the trunk up, waiting for that trunk to become quite thick. But this root work is really important in transforming a seedling into a bonsai, getting those roots established in a radial root plane, getting some branch structures started to get those primary branches coming off the trunk. So yes, it's best not to ignore your seedlings, to do some work to them, to transform them into bonsai. So that is all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.